Hey friends, welcome to your special Sunday edition of Hot News Comment Response Edition. You're gonna sit around during breakfast while I react to everything that you said this week and potentially clarify if there is anything that I maybe had done wrong this week and just go through exactly what the community is saying about hot news and as it happens. Last week's comment response was actually greatly received, which is why, again, we're doing it here. This is not gonna take away from the regular hot news content. This is merely supposed to be additional here on Sundays. But starting off with the comments from last Saturday, we got Randy saying, Brett Host reading comments is a great Sunday play. Well done. You're welcome. Brett Host has got you. Shane saying this is certainly a good segment. Would love to see more if it doesn't overload you. It goes with my weekend breakfast Guinness. Heck yes, Shane. Enjoy that Guinness. It hasn't been overwhelming. Maybe it will at some point, but just recording these casually on Saturday after all of the videos have come out is actually kind of enjoyable and honestly is something that I've been wanting more of here on the Hot News channel. For those of you who aren't familiar, Hot News is a branch off of UFD Tech, and I always thought Hot News kind of was its own brand and had its own community, and I haven't really done as much to foster that community as I really want, and that's kind of what these comment responses are supposed to be, just like a easy way of making sure that we're still covering the news, but then it's still relevant to everybody who already watches. So that's essentially what's going on here. So let's dive into Monday's episode, where it was primarily about NVIDIA and their GTX 700 series going away in drivers. Josh saying, I suppose my kids will just have to deal with the 750 Ti for a little while longer. Minecraft and Roblox still looks good in 1080p. This is, a 750 Ti seems to be a great card. Shane, again, coming in saying, I honestly never thought I would be happy to have a 2070 Super for my 1440p 144 Hz gaming. Back then was buyer's remorse when compared to other cards, but couldn't afford another. But in this climate, I got what works, and that's all I need right now. Absolutely. That's honestly what I think the key is to surviving this. Does your system do what you want it to do? Okay, great. If it's a little bit below, you're just gonna have to suffer for a little while. Patient suffering builds character, my friends. You just have to endure. Darkin and Yasha's 2006 saying, the BitConnect thing made my girlfriend laugh the whole day. Thank you for that little clip. Made her birthday even more fun. I told Catlin to put the BitConnect thing in, but then she made it she pitch shifted the guy to the scream. I thought it was hilarious, so I'm glad your girlfriend enjoyed it as well. Glenn saying, can you check what's happening with the Safari zoom bug, the 5-year-old one, where you zoom in and weird lines show up between divs? I have no idea what you're talking about. That sounds like something that you are more qualified to Google than I am. Ashikaj, I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. Kepler GPU at a Quadro K5000 4GB and is still one of the best GPU until now. Press F to pay respects. Rip your K5000, my friend. On Tuesday, we talked about how Intel was gonna have their Zen moment. It was kind of a slow news day because Labor Day was the day before, so there wasn't a whole lot of tech news. So I kind of railed on Intel a little bit for some of their comments, but let's see what you guys had to say in response to that. Thomas saying, execute, execute, execute. Pat Gelsinger is a Dalek confirmed. Okay, this one I asked my team about. Peck says, you can literally see it. Thanks, Steve. Back to you, Steve. I don't understand this reference. I don't know what that reference is. I asked my team, I asked Reece and Catlin, they couldn't give me the reference. The Kilobit saying tater tots, Cody Cass saying, huh? I don't understand it. 26 of you upvoted this. Clearly, this means something to people. I don't know what this is. Could you explain it to me? In Tuesday's video, I commented on how there was some weird Chia returns going on and people might be buying drives that already have the vast majority of their life spent. Several of people who work at Best Buy corrected me on some speculation that I made. ProNet C2 saying, to be fair, I work for Best Buy in the Geek Squad section. As far as we know, return policy is based per state, but the majority is within 14 to 30 days. I said 45 days in the video. That's because I forgot that I'm like their Elite Plus membership because I spend too much money there. And so my minimum return window is 45 days. So that was me speaking out of privilege, I guess. But then saying, that being said, Best Buy as a business doesn't return products exceeding those days. And if it is returned within the time period, we don't resell SSDs, CPUs, motherboards, AIOs, or GPUs. So that was my bad. I made the mistake of speculating about Best Buy having these issues. People who work at Best Buy obviously have a better understanding of their return policy. So that's my bad. Probably shouldn't have called out a random business's name. Lucid saying, Brett, Zen-like obviously just means somehow disruptively innovative. AMD has also talked about RDNA as having a Zen moment. I loathe Intel, but your interpretation was a bit too harsh. Endless Login saying, this is what I thought though. Intel having a Zen moment to me means that they will have products that people think are innovative again, instead of Gamers Nexus saying an Intel launch was a waste of sand. Sinister saying, well, it's kind of stupid that first Intel is like Zen is glued together and was not good, and publishing in-house benchmarks where they claim AMD is not good and now they want a Zen moment. Well, to be fair, they have moved on from CEO, so it's clearly a new company with a new direction on, they have a new new leader at the helm. So comparing where they were back in 2017 when Zen launched and comparing them to where they are now is a little bit off. But also, I hear you on that Intel is trying to say that they're going to be disruptively innovative. I think what I was trying to comment on is that they could have done that without being so directly referential to AMD. And that's part of it. They're not letting their products and their path forwards speak for itself. They have to get something familiar in gamers' minds and then pitch that to them, as opposed to selling us based on the benefits and the prowess of what they actually have. And so I get that it's like they're trying to say they're disruptively innovative, but I feel like they're doing it in a way that gives too much credence to AMD, if that makes sense. Which, like, I'm all for competitors being good competitors where they recognize each other's strengths. It's like anytime somebody has like a business idea and they're like, we're gonna be the Uber of X industry. It's just like, well, is it really that innovative if you have to call comparisons to something else in order for me to see the need, as opposed to you laying out what my need is and then very clearly fulfilling it with your product and or service? That's what I would have liked to see in this instance, where it was more about we can sell you what we have, rather than we're going to try to harken back to an experience you had and try to get you to feel that for us here. Shirag saying, am I overanalyzing? Half the videos about Intel? Yeah, that again was because of just the slow news day. I turned it into more of a commentary video as opposed to all of the news that was coming out, because I think I had 4 articles, maybe 5, that wasn't crypto stonks, and so I maybe padded it a little bit and I could have talked about them just a little slightly less. Henry saying, I think it's just the new boss's hype, even though it's awkward, I think it's a good sign. That's a fair interpretation to make of it. Maybe I'm just reading too much into it, which again is why I asked you guys. Very much just want to have an open dialogue about what's going on here. John Johnson saying, well, now I know it's Intel that's been stealing my underpants. Thank you, somebody who got the reference. It's an old South Park reference. Like that episode came out when I was a kid, so I can understand why a large portion of our audience didn't really get the underpants gnome reference that we made in that episode. Trashkov saying, gotta add Cardano to your crypto stocks. I'm gonna address this here. That's not the purpose of crypto stocks. I'm not adding anything that's not a mainstream recognized cryptocurrency, because the point of crypto stocks is me trying to bring the mixture of mainstream recognition with just quick price updates on something that's supposed to be a light-hearted segment in the middle of hot news. It's not supposed to be a serious analysis of cryptocurrencies. It's not supposed to be a recommendation of anything. It really is just me making sure I'm keeping up on where the prices are, just so I have a general understanding of that, and then communicating that to you. So adding Cardano or whatever special currency you want me to do because you think it's valuable or better, if it actually hits mainstream, and I'm not talking mainstream within the tech community or mainstream within like the cryptocurrency sphere, I'm talking about mainstream in like actual mainstream. I can go talk to my dad who doesn't actually follow cryptocurrency. He knows what I'm talking about. My dad knows Bitcoin, he knows Ethereum, and he knows Dogecoin, because they've become either part of the cultural milieu or they're memes. And that's exactly what I'm aiming for with crypto stocks, not a here, let's talk about crypto. That's not the point of that entire segment. Maybe I haven't communicated that clearly enough, but crypto stonks is lighthearted, non-important, and honestly, I don't want it to be a deep dive into crypto at all. Let's look at Wednesday's comments, where we talked about how there was a new CUDA library implementation for RISC-V that NVIDIA may or may not be super fans of. Zonther saying, I love dark mode because it's so much easier on my eyes. Even in bright environments, I choose dark mode. I absolutely agree with you, Zonther. Clinton saying, if you could pick up a CUDA accelerator PCI Express card for your fully AMD system, this would be awesome. Abdul also saying, looking forward to CUDA on Radeon. Universe, do your thing. Hopefully, at some point, my friends. Probably one of the reasons why NVIDIA is not doing it. They don't want to open it up. They want you to buy their hardware, as opposed to you having options in the market to buy another company's hardware. We've seen this time and time again. NVIDIA is very protective. They like to lock down their software. So while that is good, it's a pipe dream. David saying, maybe I'm weird, but I love the Matrix sequels. I'm excited about the 4th movie. Loved is pretty strong. Yeah, that's an odd take. Enjoyed, that's a different sentiment. Like, they were stupid fun if you didn't think too hard about them. They retconned a few things in the 2nd and 3rd one that kind of is just like, it nullified the impact of the 1st movie, in my opinion, having Revolutions and Reloaded or whatever they were called. It made it feel cheap to some extent, that 1st movie. That's probably why I'm most bothered by the sequels. Enjoy them, sure, like they're stupid action flicks. It's kind of fun in that regard. And after seeing the trailer, I can get behind the fourth one a little bit more in terms of being a stupid action flick, but I still think that they should have stopped after the first one. That's just my personal opinion, obviously. Ryzen saying, the only real CUDA is my Hemi CUDA in my driveway. Hell yeah, brother. Zeke saying, just you wait, TikTok zombies, an entire lost decade and subsequent recovery years for the kids and young adults who lost the will to live, content on only existing by a screen, mark my words. I feel like that might be a little dismissive of the fact that we have already undergone content consumption changes before in history with the generation that did not grow up on it saying the exact same thing. And I mean, there's obviously people who argue that life was better back before we had the television, and life was better back before we had the radio, and life was better back before we had the newspapers. You can go through history and see satirical comics of people calling out people reading the newspaper on the subway as being brain dead zombies. And the true reality is people do want some sort of physical human connection. I think we're all wired to actually desire that. The benefit of content consumption is that it gives us more control and autonomy over it, but then obviously the danger is that these companies and corporations are doing it in a way that gamifies us. It creates this hollow experience through it where they're determining what we engage with rather than what we determine we engage with. I get what you're saying. I don't fully buy into the idea because it's been a similar statement like regularly repeated, and I think I just would rather believe in the hope that people will maybe get kind of hooked on this content consumption pattern, realize they need more depth, and then add that depth into their lives. And it's something that I've done as I've grown up. I realized that my ways as a teenager were stupid and shallow and dumb and hollow. And now as a 30-year-old, 30 plus, 31, how old am I? Doesn't matter. I realize that I need more depth in my life in all areas, whether it's friendship, in my marriage, with my kids, in my content consumption. I actually need purpose. And so I've changed my habits based on how I've adapted. And I'm not necessarily going to say the next generation can't do the same thing. On Thursday's episode of Hot News, we talked about how there was a report that came out about AMD's Ring Bus and how it limits to 8 cores on a chiplet. Let's check out the comments. The Real saying, absolutely anus. The hot new stamp for tech or situations that fall dismally below acceptable standards needs to be made into a real stamp. IMO. Cheers. I love the word anus. It's not quite a swear, right? Like anus is not ever really considered a swear word particularly, but it's off-putting. It's so wrong. Like it's obscene in a way, but not in the same way that other words are obscene. And so I love using the word anus. It off-puts people in the right way where they have to question, what the hell did I just say? I love it. Def Side saying, pigeon flying over Tesla car, poops, Tesla car, pigeon eradication program activated. John Terria saying, I love new word combinations, especially ones that may irritate those that are allergic to alliteration. From this day forth, absolutely anus is armed in my arsenal. Aha. Really? How are the top 2 comments about absolutely anus? I feel like I use the word anus all the time. I'm glad that you guys appreciate it, but man, you should come check out our Twitch live streams because the word anus gets thrown around quite a bit. And this is my favorite sound clip that I use on stream all the time.
Try to relax your anus.
Hilarious. Best thing ever. Ken saying, I've watched Ian's video about it and it's much less of a deal than you might think. AMD won't stay on a pure ring bus. They will extend it and change it on Zen 4 and upwards, making their best of the architecture. They didn't limit themselves. In fact, Zen 3 doesn't use a pure ring bus. It's more of a mixture of ring and mesh, best of both worlds. I read a few people saying, like Austin saying the ring bus news is being overblown. I guess I then did overblow it. Like, I wasn't intentionally trying to do that. I think from my stance, I was just commenting on the intriguingness of what the architecture is and how they are limited, right? They limited themselves on Zen 3 to 8 cores. Can they change it? Yes, they're excellent engineers. They're going to be able to figure that out. Hopefully, that's like the general idea, that they are smart enough to overcome limitations that they've already put in place because they're intentional limitations. There has to be boundaries everywhere, right? Like AM4 is a limitation because you have determined the socket and how you're going to appropriate it when you could have chosen a Threadripper socket, something like that. That's my general point there. I guess I miscommunicated where my point of bringing that up was not to be like, oh, AMD's so broken, but rather, hey, this is intriguing on why we didn't get more cores on Zen 3 and why we may not get more cores immediately because of how they've designed the architecture, and it's really intriguing that AMD is now revealing the fact that they have a bi-directional ring bus. So just more of a, hey, this is kind of neat, is how I wanted to come across. If I did not communicate that, it was a misplay on my part. Arjan saying, I have auto wipers for more than 15 years on all of my cars, always worked fine. Yes, now I know Tesla is not a real car manufacturer. I've never had auto wipers for the last, how long have I been driving? 15 years. I've been driving for 15 years. I've never had auto wipers before I've had a Tesla, and it sucks. But I know that's because Tesla tried to do it a different way than how it's supposed to properly be done. This is like when they're changing the yoke steering wheel. They do things differently for the sake of being different, and it makes it worse. Ferdinand said, yes, James Webb Telescope. Woohoo! Thank you for being excited about James Webb. I really appreciate that. Peter saying the only right places to tattoo the Hot News and Not Who's logos are the cheeks. I hadn't thought about getting a Not Who's logo on the other cheek. That might be a donation incentive for the upcoming charity stream. I will keep you updated. On Friday's episode of Hot News, we talked about how there's going to be an RTX 30 Super Series launch in January and then an RTX 40 Series launch in October. Let's see what you guys said. James Bantam saying, notifying me of Google Dark Mode was the most valuable news I've ever heard in my life. Maybe not the most important, but the most valuable. I agree. Finally getting Dark Mode on Google.com search is just like, why did it take so long? We're here at the end of 2021. Why Google? Rob S. saying 30 Series is going to be the lost generation of video cards. My local Micro Center has 30 Series cards listed online in stock for the first time in well over a year. Granted, it's a 3080 Ti for $2,000, but it's there. I've been seeing that sentiment a lot, that this is the lost generation. RX 6000 people are going to skip it. RTX 30 Series people are going to skip it. I'm wondering, is that true, or is that being said out of frustration? I don't know, part of me is questioning if all of the cards came in stock, like, let's just say in October, everybody was able to buy it through the end of the year for the holiday shopping season, and you could get it at MSRP. Is it then a lost generation? Like, if people are able to make up for the sales that they missed this last year, and they can just like all gobble them up until Christmas, like, would it be lost at that point? Or is it that people just feel defeated and they can't imagine how things could get better, but if they did get better, it wouldn't actually be the lost generation? I'm curious about how that stuff works. The Flavor is saying the way you pronounce Nürburgring was quite good for an American. Thank you so much. I've heard most people telling me it's supposed to be pronounced Nürburgring, but I feel like the umlaut on the U like requires me to say Nür, right? Like, am I wrong? I need feedback here. Bill saying I actually nailed that pronunciation the first try. Kinda cleaned it up on the last try. I tried my best. Michael Phelps, the Michael Phelps. I had buyer's remorse after getting my 2080 Ti about 2 years ago. It only took 6 months or so to realize how lucky I was to get it. I skip all the 30 series cards and hope availability improves for the 40 series. I hear that. Question goes back. If there's like a super amount of availability in November where like you can't go into Best Buy without like them having a tower of GPUs, is it lost? Would people still pick it up? I don't know. Jackal saying, you guys are my Google. That's the kindest thing anyone has ever said to me. Hey, sometimes I have thoughts in the middle of Hot News and I want to know the answer, but I don't want to search the answer because I feel like I'm having a conversation with you guys, even though I'm really only having a conversation with my camera, but I want to feel like there could be some back and forth. So yes, you are my conversational Google. You're welcome, Jackal. Laszlo says, use dark mode sparingly but dramatically, referring to when I turned off the lights for Hot News dark mode. Your feature themes are sometimes the only way for me to follow your auctioneer pattern. Speed isn't the problem, but dropping the volume on some of the best side commentaries is a challenge. Oh, I'd never thought of that. I thought like, because I'm making an aside, like in typical conversational pattern, I would say it at a lower volume in order to just like kind of indicate it's not important, it's just supposed to be a joke. And like my volume change is how I'm delivering the joke, like that's part of it, but I can understand how on watching a video, especially if you're not like listening on headphones, how that could like cause you to be like, I didn't hear him, have to rewind, lean in, and then catch it. So thanks for that feedback. I'll take that into consideration and see if I can make any changes there. I've stuck in my ways in my presentation, but I'm obviously looking for ways to adapt, overcome, and get better. So I appreciate it, Laszlo. Refried Noodle says, I want a GTX. They can take their RTX cores along with increased presses and shove them back up their colons. I always turn that off along with several other effects. I partially feel that. I think that is more Like, for the most part, I don't want RTX turned on in the games that actually have it because of the performance hit that goes alongside it. Certain games have started to come around. Cyberpunk 2077, regardless of its gameplay issues, runs fantastically on higher end RTX cards with DLSS turned on. Ray tracing looks phenomenal. So like, I get the value. I think it's the way of the future. It makes games look stunning. I hear you that you're paying more for something that you didn't necessarily want to have. And lastly, let's talk about yesterday's episode of Hot News, where I did This Week in News, reviewing everything, all of the top stories that happened. Smoked Meat saying, I really hope Intel does well in the GPU market, as I hope ARMs, etc. on CPU. I want more competition for better and new products. That would amaze me again. I hear you. I think that's absolutely correct. I'm pulling for Intel for the exact same reason. I'm less confident in their ability to pull it off. I think the hype surrounding Intel's GPU, number one, is actually very small, and then number two, I don't know if they can deliver on the amount of hype that's even there in the first place. I'm waiting with bated breath, essentially. Ben K says, downloading and installing TikTok sounds a lot like hanging out at a kid's playground. I'll pass on that. I disagree. There are plenty of more, not adults or like mature in the typical sense of that word, but like a more ages 30 plus content on there. There's plenty of stuff. Like, the two weird things that I've gotten from the TikTok recommendation algorithm that I wouldn't have said I want this type of content is construction stuff as well as bodybuilding stuff. That's content that I don't typically sign up for, but then when I see it on TikTok, I watch the crap out of it. Getting bodybuilding advice, even though very clearly not my wheelhouse. Also, there's the one guy called Inspector AJ, and he just goes around to flipped houses and points out all of the things that they've done wrong, or like if there's like some sort of code violation. That type of content is absolutely there on TikTok, and it takes a little while to get past like the dancing and the trends and all of that, and actually find the more in-depth, older themed content, but it's absolutely there. I was having this conversation with another YouTuber friend of mine, and what he communicated, and I think is absolutely going to be the shift that's necessary for TikTok's branding, is that TikTok is no longer going to be viewed as like TikTok, but rather it's the place you go for short form vertical format video. Like, if you want a YouTube video distilled down to its quickest, best points, TikTok's going to be the place for that. At least that's what I think their branding is going to need to shift to as more established creators start shifting over to that platform, as well as creators on the platform actually get better. So I hear you on the kids playground thing, but I also think that's a misinformed outsider's perspective of somebody who hasn't actually participated in it. But a vast majority of you saying you prefer long-form content. Raymond saying he despises YouTube creators doing 10 minutes videos for no good reason. I absolutely hear you on that. It's shifted down to 8 minutes, so that's a little bit better. And then lastly, Sebastian says, 2/3 of a pound? WTF that's supposed to meant? Use metrics, please. No! All right, I will use whatever unit of measurement suits me in the time. I have to convert to Celsius and kilometers all the time. When I'm talking to my South African friends, I will speak in whatever unit I want. I'm gonna talk in 2/3 of a pound as opposed to 500 grams. All right, that's what I'm gonna do because that's what I wanna do. I'll say 500 grams when I wanna say 500 grams. Thank you very much. And thank you for all of your comments on this week's episodes of Hot News. I love doing this comment response. It feels like I'm engaging with the community a little bit more. Let me know if you still enjoy it down below in those comments, and I'll see you tomorrow for breakfast, my friends, with more tech news. Cheerios.